Welcome to Wezesha Wednesday. Welcome to Wezesha Wednesday. This is the last Wezesha Wednesday. Woohoo! Yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks. I was supposed to do this at 6:30, but it's 9:30 right now. I'm sorry. I just had to spend some good family time, and then I just got caught up. But I'm here with the last of Wezesha Wednesday. Why is it the last one, you may ask? Well, a few weeks ago, we decided to try this thing out, Wezesha Wednesday, which was basically a way to encourage people as they figure out how to get from aspirational to accomplishing a goal, right? And what I hypothesized a while back was there's this thing called the inside action gap, which is the gap between the things that we want to do and actually doing them. So that's where the inside action gap is created. And so I figured perhaps one of the ways to solve the inside action gap is to try and see what are those things that stop us, that block us from accomplishing our goals. And I hypothesized, hey, there's these set of things, and I kind of put them together and called it the fumble framework. So those of you who've been around for the last few weeks are now familiar with fumble, especially those who attended Olivia's graduation this weekend where I talked about fumble. I'm so rude, forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ichi, for those of you who haven't been following Wezesha or who are new to Wezesha. My name is Ichi, and I've been coming every Wednesday to talk about basically helping people move from aspiration to accomplishment in terms of goals. Why is it called Wezesha? Wezesha is basically, loose translation is to empower. And Wezesha Wednesday is a way for us to empower people on Wednesday, which is the day when people typically hump over to Thursday, Friday. All the preaching on Sunday, all the energy on Monday is slowly winding down. So Wezesha Wednesday is a way to maybe bring you back, spike you up, give you some sort of like some Red Bull, right? And simply put, Wezesha's mission is to empower through shared experiences. So through these Facebook Lives, I do a couple of things. One, I sort of talk about books that I've read, academic research, experiences I've had, experiences people have told me about. And I'm hoping those shared experiences can help you figure out how to go from what I call aspiration to accomplishment. So over the past few weeks, we've explored the causes of the inside action gap, right? Which is the reasons why we're not able to accomplish our goals. So we talked about, week one, we talked about facing fear. And the big lesson there was that fear is not something you should be told, like, don't be afraid, because fear is fundamental for your survival. So what you have to do is to try and figure out how to face the fear. And some of the things we talked about were exposure therapy, meaning just doing small things at a time, and learning, because the more you learn, that helps you face your fear. The second week, we talked about getting unstuck. In fact, I had this discussion with someone just today where they were saying they were stuck in accomplishing a goal. And I said, well, my buddy Adam Grant says that accomplishing a goal is not a linear, right? It's not one step at the other. Sometimes you need to detour, get energized, and then come back. And so that's what getting unstuck is about, is talking about what are the ways where you can detour for a second, get fueled up, get back on track, and then accomplish your goal. Third thing was managing your mindset. And we talked about the mindset. The brain is the most powerful weapon we have. And the brain oftentimes tries to stop us from doing things because it figures that this thing is dangerous for us. But we have to figure out how to change our mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And we talked about that the third week. Talked about being bold, which is actually taking initiative, raising your hand and doing something, going into whatever you're doing with compassion. I was listening to Olivia was talking about some of the things that are important to her this past week's graduation. And the way she was talking with conviction, especially about hair, about black hair, about the Crown Act, something that I personally am so for. Like, it's so important not to be discriminated against because of your hair. But talking with conviction, there was so much boldness in what she was talking about. And then I talked about practicing leadership. So practicing leadership is really about self-leadership and being that person who's constantly reflecting, who's constantly sort of stepping back, looking at yourself, seeing, understanding yourself best. We talked about sort of the cognitive theory where you try and understand how you think so that you can help yourself be in a position where you can accomplish your goals. So today we wrap up with the most important of them all. At the end of the day, insight is nothing if there is no action with it. So today I'm going to talk about the E, and the E stands for execution. Focus on execution. At the end of the day, that's what we have to do. That's the job, is to execute and to accomplish our goals. So what is execution? Sounds bad, right? Like that's taking someone's head out. But really, execution is carrying out a plan, right? Carry out the plan. You had an aspirational goal, you went through all the fumble framework, and now you have to actually carry out the plan. So remember, we started at the beginning with the insight action gap. So we said knowing the right thing to do doesn't automatically mean we do the right thing. It's not hypocrisy per se. It's that learning something and doing it involve different set of muscles. So the execution muscle is extremely, extremely important. I remember when I was I've been in school for so long. I've done so many things in school. I forget what it was. But I remember the instructor asking us, how much of your time do you spend planning and how much of your time do you spend executing? Actually, you know what was when doing research? How much of your time do you spend like thinking about what you're going to write, and what percent of your time do you spend writing? And most people said, yeah, I spend 90% thinking so I can then spend 10% just writing. And I remember him saying, you need to reverse that. You need to spend 90% of the time writing because you need to get into the habit of writing. And now that I think about it, this is what he was saying. Like, our muscles haven't been trained to act. Our muscles have been trained to think and plan and strategize. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But what I'm saying is, in this journey of aspiration to accomplishment, we need to spend time executing. We need to exercise the muscle of execution. So, last week was a whirlwind, folks. There was so much going on. But last week, I was honored to attend and participate in the Diaspora Kenya Tech Summit. I attended the opening day at Vivo. Shout out to Vivo, Wandia, Shiro, all those people. Welcome to ATL. Plus, this weekend, I attended several graduations. And you know what? I thought about it, today. I was like, gosh, what did all those events have in common? Execution excellence. All of them, for whatever you may say about how it was executed, whether it was flawless or not flawless, whatever happened, they were executed. They got done. They got stuff done. Beyond all the planning, the adjusting, the fumbling, the date change, blah, 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 and all the stress that comes with it, the key was execution. All of them were executed. I mean, getting a Kenyan delegation to ATL, setting up whatever it was at Cobb Galleria and all those trade events that no one knew about, whatever, there was execution done. I mean, we had the president, the president of Kenya attend and see all of us. Imagine the people behind the scenes just executing. Sometimes with limited information, sometimes unsure about the information they have, but they executed. The Vivo opening, shout out to Jean. She interviewed Wandia on Facebook Live this morning. And you hear some of the stress that Wandia was going through and the date change. And then suddenly they have 4 weeks to do this. And suddenly the lease needs to be signed. Execution. You listen to Michelle and Olivia, whose graduations I attended this past weekend, just finishing high school and college respectively. Execution. At the end of the day, you can put all the vision boards you want. You can dream all the dreams you want about the accomplishing of the goals that you need to accomplish. At the end of the day, without execution, they are just that, dreams. Without execution, they're just that, dreams. I know many of you want to start businesses. Many of you are seeking promotions. Many of you are looking for jobs. Many of you want to make changes in your life. Many of you are doing are dreaming of all these things. And you're probably doing the right thing. You're putting all your plans in place to get it done. But at the end of the day, shit needs to get done. Get it done. And that's what execution is about. So, again, one of my favorite books on execution, because it focuses on execution. The core themes of the book: execution is a discipline. Okay? Jane Mukami talks about this all the time, the discipline to get stuff done. Execution is not merely a set of tactics, but a systematic discipline that should be integrated into your life. Integrated into your life. If you want to lose weight, if you want to get that promotion, if you want to change careers, whatever it is that you want. Remember, we're talking about aspirational goals, which my operational definition of an aspirational goal is that it's not something that's easily accomplishable, but it's not something that's such a stretch that it becomes sort of an inspiration. Like, I want to boil water, things like that. It is a stretch goal that you want to accomplish and you put your mind to it. So execution is not merely a set of tactics, but a systematic discipline that should be integrated in your life. It requires a rigorous approach to setting goals, aligning your resources, and holding yourself accountable for results. So I think I mentioned this a few Wezesha Wednesdays ago. I'm not good at holding myself accountable for results. I'm not. But part of what I'm trying to do is to prove to you that it can be done. That's why I'm doing this Wezesha Wednesdays, even though it's 9:46 p.m. I committed to you to do this every Wednesday for 6 weeks, and we've done it. I'm holding myself accountable, and part of holding yourself accountable, honestly, is telling others what you aspire to do. Because when you tell them, then you have someone else holding you accountable, right? Execution is a discipline. 2, you have to play a leadership role in execution, which means you must clearly define your goals. You must foster for yourself a culture of accountability. That's the second time we're hearing accountability with execution. You must create an environment where you feel empowered to take ownership of tasks and deliver results. What are you doing to hold yourself accountable? What are you putting in place to create that culture within yourself of holding yourself accountable? Some people are really good at this. I think, who was it who was telling me? Someone was telling me today, I can't remember who. They were saying they go to bed at 9 a.m. because they have to be up at 5, and that's it. So they've put it out there, not only for themselves, they've created that culture, but for others, that others cannot contact them after 9 p.m., point blank period. So if that's what you need to put in place so that you can execute and get stuff done to accomplish your goals, then do it. You have to play a leadership role in your execution. Again, it takes practice. I'm not good at it. I observe Wawa is really good at it. She's like literally flawless when it comes to execution. Pop, 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 pop. And I'm like many of us, we're like, yeah, okay, maybe tomorrow, when the stars align and the sun is bright, then I'll do it. But I have seen that if this is something that's really important to you, you will get it done. So off the cuff, here's another tip. Find out for yourself, what is that thing that you execute so flawlessly in? Okay? What is that thing or those set of things that you execute so flawlessly in, that you're so disciplined in? And find out, what is it about those things that make you so disciplined? Or what is it about yourself when engaging in that thing that makes you so disciplined? I'll give you an example. Some of you, I was talking to some people this weekend, they're like, bro, you've been jumping box jumps. Yeah, that's what I like doing. Box jumps and burpees, that's like my thing. but yoga is not, right? So what is it that makes me so disciplined when it comes to the gym, when it comes to, things like that? I need to reflect and say, okay, why am I so good at playing that leadership role and keeping that culture when it comes to those things, and then try and do that with something else that I want to accomplish? If I want to get a promotion, then I have to carry that habit across so that I can be able to do it. All right, okay, cool. Execution is a discipline, your leadership role in execution. 3, the importance of, I put it here, I sort of butchered some of what they said. So I said, importance of your tribe. Execution highlights the significance of having the right people in the right roles. Now that's when you're executing at a company level. If you own a company, for those of you who do, focus on building a talented team, developing their skills, and motivating them to achieve organizational objectives. Okay, that said, let me go back to the crucial point here. The importance of your tribe. If you want to execute, remember, you've thought about it, you've planned it, find your tribe. And your tribe may be all the people that have loose connections with you, because sometimes the loose connections is what helps, the whole Facebook family, versus your tribe, meaning your siblings and people who are close to you. Identify who your tribe is and where you can inject yourself into your tribe, because that tribe will help you execute. Because that tribe will encourage you when it comes to accomplishing your aspirational goals. And maybe you don't need a tribe. Maybe you need one person. Maybe you need a coach. Maybe you need someone who's going to be that encouraging person who will, listen to you as you whine and moan and it's not possible or I need, but who will hold you accountable when it comes to execution. Remember, the muscle for insight and the muscle for action are completely different. You may have insight, but not action. It says refresh, so I'm wondering. You may have action. You may have insight, but not action. So practice the action muscle. All right. So we've gone through execution is a discipline. You have a leadership role in execution. Importance of your tribe. I talked about this, but I'll say it in a different way. You need to build a culture of execution, a culture that values execution. This involves creating clear expectations, promoting sort of like recognizing and rewarding high performance. Create a culture that values execution. We talked about this maybe a few weeks ago when we talked about rewarding yourself, right? So, I hear a lot of people who are on a weight loss journey or who are trying to, health journey. Like you stay, like if you're doing intermittent fasting, you stay 16 hours without eating, right? From, 8 p.m. to like 2 p.m., 8 p.m. all the way to 2 p.m. And then how many hours is that? It's 12, 8, 12. Okay, 8 p.m. to 12 noon, right? And you're giving yourself only 6 to 8 hours to eat. You've created a culture of execution. When I did intermittent fasting, it was the most difficult thing to do, but it did exactly this. It created a culture of execution where I knew where to start, where to stop, and that became a culture. So create a culture of execution and don't forget to reward yourself. So again, those who are losing weight or doing weight management, sometimes part of it is saying, on Sundays I'll eat ice cream or whatever it is. But the culture of execution is getting stuff done. And again, some people may be hearing this and saying, Ichi, we do that all the time. Cool, then maybe you need to think of a more aspirational goal, because it shouldn't be easy. If it's easy, then it's not an aspirational goal. You do it every day. If you are here to work on your relationship, create wealth, maintain sort of a healthy lifestyle, all those aspirational goals that we have, then you cannot take for granted the power of execution. Number 5, the execution process. And I'll kind of talk about examples of execution process, but there is a process for execution. There's many, but today I'll talk about one, a very smart one. And then the last one is all these guys talk about the same thing I do. What's up with that? These guys, yeah, they copied from me. But I talked about this a few weeks ago, is the importance of adaptability. So they acknowledge that things change, your environment is changing, things come in the middle of your execution, and you need to be willing to adjust and adapt so that you can continue with the execution. I talked about this a few weeks ago where I said, when preparing for a marathon, I had my regiment of miles that I must run every week. And as I was getting towards the last few weeks of preparation, we were at the 20-mile mark, where for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I had to run 20 miles. And it happened to be, I think it was February of one year, and it was freezing and it snowed, and there was no way I was going to run 20 miles outside. So what I did, I ran 20 miles on a treadmill, right? Now, it was all about adaptability. And I think that is my superpower. I'm really good at adapting to the environment. So maybe I have a superpower there where someone else has a superpower somewhere else. But at the end of the day, being able to adapt during execution is extremely important. Yeah, enough said. So I'll go over these again. I have my notes here. Execution as a discipline, your own leadership role in execution, importance of your tribe or your coach or that person who holds you accountable, creating a culture of execution. So execution has to be an everyday thing. Once you create that culture, then when something new comes in, you kind of know you have a template for how to do it. The execution process, which we'll talk about in just a second, or at least I'll give you one of the execution processes, and the importance of adaptability. When things come, how do you shuffle and change, but still execute and meet your goal? So the execution process. There's a number of things out there, but I thought I would talk about probably my favorite. This is something most of you are familiar with. Well, some of you may not be familiar with. Maybe you've heard or you haven't practiced. It's by one of the best sort of like management scientists is what I would call him. His name is Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker had like all these like theories, and one of them was about management by objectives, how like you execute. If you have like objectives, how do you accomplish those goals? And this has been linked to him is the SMART goals, SMART. So again, some of you may be very familiar with this. So if I'm repeating this, it's a good thing because it's good to be reminded. If you're not familiar with it, I hope this will change your life. When it comes to execution, you need to create goals that are SMART. That means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. SMART. So as you think about even at the aspiration point where you're trying to figure out what is it that your aspirational goal is or what you're trying to accomplish, make it SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So here's a couple of examples. So I've told you about running a marathon, right? So maybe my aspirational goal is to run a marathon, right? So that's my aspirational goal. For some of you this year, it was to lose weight. For some of you this year was to work on yourself, work on your relationship, career accelerate. For some of you, it's I want to start a business and I don't know where to start. You have all these aspirations, and I'm here to help you. I'm literally here, like I'm putting myself out. I am honestly just here to help you accomplish those aspirational goals, but they must be SMART. Specific. Remember I talked about running a marathon. Specific. I'd like to start training every day to run a marathon. So you have to be specific with what are those things that you're going to do in order to accomplish your goal. If it is running a marathon, I'd like to start training every day. Measurable. How are you going to measure your progress? So back in the day, I used to have a spreadsheet which said week 1, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Week 2, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. How many miles, how many miles, how many miles? And then next to it, I'll put how much time it took me to run. Measurable. You cannot not measure. You cannot not measure. How are you going to know if you accomplish your goal? You know, Olivia accomplished a goal. She has her degree from Spelman. That is like, it's measurable. I don't care, GPA. I don't know. Running a marathon, it doesn't matter. Whether you take 6 hours, 4 hours, 3.5 hours. Now, when you go to the next level, then you can start saying, I want to run a marathon in sub 3.5. Fine. Measurable. And how are you going to use, back in the day, we didn't have this, right? So it was a matter of, literally, I remember I used to run with my, whatever that Nokia phone, whatever it was, right? Put start and just run with it. And I'm holding it, ta, 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 you know, and then I see what time I started, what time I ended, right? And that's what adaptability is about. Sometimes you may not have those things with you, but you still have to figure out how to measure it. 3, it has to be attainable. Attainable, and that's what I'm calling sort of aspirational. Meaning, is this something you can actually accomplish? It may be stretched for you. And I'm not going to put a limit on you on what is aspirational. When I was in California, shout out to Southern California, you know, when I was in junior college, I had all these like schoolmates who are aspiring actors. So they would be in class during the day. They would be, you know, serving at a restaurant or at a bar in the evening, and they would be waiting for that call to go for, not an interview, whatever, rehearsal, interview, rehearsal, whatever they call that thing, right? Yeah. So, but they knew this was an attainable goal, right? To be in a movie, to be an actor, even though just a small percent of them would actually end up on the big screen, but it was attainable for them. So is it attainable? In this case, when I first thought about running a marathon, I said, hey, I can run 10K, so I can run 6.2 miles. Another 20 I can do, right? So now if you ask me to run 100 miles now, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So as you think about aspirational goals, is it something that's attainable? Relevant. This is very important because this speaks to motivation. Maybe for you, you value your health and fitness, so this will help you attain your goal. Maybe for you, it's just something you have an intrinsic desire to run a marathon. Whatever it is, it's important to identify the why. Because if you identify the why and why this is relevant to you, then motivation will kick in and keep you there. And then time bound. Set a date. Set a date. Set a date. Every time I ran a marathon, I would literally sign up for the following year. You know, back in the day it was like $40. But by committing to it and setting the date, then I knew how to work backwards towards it. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound. So for those of you who have aspirational goals that you want to accomplish, make them specific, i.e., what it is that you'd like to start doing in order to accomplish that goal. Make it measurable, a way to measure over and over again toward your progress. Make it attainable. This is important. Again, I'm not going to put a cap on what you think is attainable or not. All I'm saying is where I can help is when it comes to aspirational goals, which for me, I define as something that is a stretch for you. If you can do it flawlessly, it's not an aspirational goal. If it is something that is so out there, like boiling the ocean, you know, feeding all the hungry in the entire world, then that's inspirational. That's a purpose-driven goal. And we can talk about it, but I don't think it fits in this framework, right? It has to be attainable, has to be relevant. We need to figure out why. What is it that's making this so important for you? And then you have to put a time on it, right? We can't be in insight mode forever. We need to action, okay? So here's another example. I saw this on the internet, like it's a book. Smart goal for writing a book. Touche. I have an idea for a story that's specific, measurable. It has to be 100,000 words long, attainable. I'm retired. I have time. I want to write a story. Relevant. Reading and writing have always been a passion. Time bound. I'll start writing the first week of July and finish my first draft by December. Boom. SMART. The E in fumble is execution. At the end of the day, you have a job to do. You have to accomplish your goal. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't. But it's got to get done. So for those of you on January 1st who sat down and declared what January 2024 was going to be, I'm here to tell you June is coming up in a couple of days. I'm going to use the words of Jean, my mentor, who doesn't know she's my mentor. In the words of Jean, I give you permission to make June 1st, January 1st. I give you permission to make June 1st, January 1st. So let's reset. Let us go from aspiration to accomplishment. Let us conquer the insight action gap. Let us know that we're going to fumble. We're going to get fear. We're going to see fear and we're going to face it. We're going to get stuck and we're going to get unstuck. We're going to manage our mindset. We're going to be bold. We're going to practice leadership and we're going to focus on execution. Y'all, it's been a great 6 weeks. Yeah. FUMBLE. It's been a great 6 weeks. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take probably the next week off. Get some feedback from all of you about this, and if this is something you want me to continue to do. The next set of Wezesha Wednesdays is going to be more focused on businesses. For those of you who are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, I have something for you. Where's that book? My goodness, I have like 58 million books, but this one is called Playing to Win. Playing to Win. And I think that's the book I'm going to take a lot of material from to talk about how you can take your business to the next level. So look out for that probably a couple of weeks from now. In terms of the core Wezesha sessions, I've received a lot of feedback. I'm trying to put all of it together so I can have the panel discussions that I'll have like every Friday, probably starting sometime in June. But anyway, you need anything, you know how to find me. I think in the, what do they say, in the comments somewhere there's a link to a survey. I'm just trying to collect information to see what's relevant to you, what's important to you, and most importantly, how I can help. Our goal is to go from aspiration to accomplishment. Our reality is that along the way, the road will not always be paved for us. The weather will not always be sunny, and that's where fumble comes in. But I believe in all of you. Face your fear, get unstuck, manage your mindset, be bold, practice self-leadership, execute. Deuces.